Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Bruce Bloom. I'm the Chief Science Officer at the Kabuki Syndrome Foundation. And it's such a pleasure to talk to you and welcome back from your break. I hope you all had an excellent break. And for those of you who are adults with KS or you're caregivers to somebody with Kabuki Syndrome, we hope you had a chance to take our survey. If you started it but have not finished it yet, or you have not started, please remember to complete it by January 5th, so your voice can be added to those of others. We're really interested on what the community thinks. In this next segment, we'll be discussing how Kabuki Syndrome Foundation is changing lives through collaboration. With all the promising therapies in our treatment development pipeline, it's clear that no person, no lab, no institution alone can solve the problems of Kabuki Syndrome. So we need many brilliant minds working together, and this is why KSF has developed a comprehensive plan, a research roadmap to treatments. So what that looks like is the LEAP program, the LEAP Road to Treatments. It's an acronym, and the L stands for learn about the root cause of the symptoms. And while we know a lot about Kabuki Syndrome, we don't know everything, and we're learning more every day. E is for enable. It enables collaboration to drive more efficient research. A is for accelerate, promising therapeutic candidates. And P is for prepare for clinical trials. Each one of these arms is important in our mission in finding treatments for Kabuki Syndrome. And we're making sure that we've touched on some of these in the first half of the conference, and we'll be touching on the rest as we go along for the rest of the seminar. So the data Dr. Bjornson mentioned in the first half of the presentation is funded through a discovery grant aimed at advancing our understanding of Kabuki Syndrome. And so that falls under the learn part of LEAP. And you heard from Jackie Harris about the BHB study. This is what we're actively fundraising for, and thanks to many of you who've already donated since the conference started. This falls under the Accelerate initiative as we work to move that therapy from early stage positive clinical results that Jackie talked about to a validated protocol that can be used to get this approved and used by patients. In this segment, we'll start by giving you an update on the Kabuki Syndrome Biomarker and Outcome Measure Consortium. That's a mouthful, so we're just calling it KSOC, which is the main component of our Enable arm. This is a multi-site consortium that enables collaboration among the leading experts in Kabuki Syndrome research so that we can find treatments faster together. So what is the Kabuki Syndrome Consortium? It's the highest priority of LEAP right now. In 2023, we secured $1.35 million to launch the consortium. And we did this because we recognize that finding treatments for Kabuki Syndrome is not possible without Kabuki Syndrome specific tools that can measure treatment efficacy during a clinical trial. So the primary focus of the consortium is to develop these tools called outcome measures and biomarkers. Outcome measures and biomarkers are used to measure if a treatment works during a clinical trial. Without them, clinical trials are less likely to provide sufficient information to allow the FDA or other regulatory authorities to approve the drugs for patient use. Kabuki Syndrome is different than all other diseases, so biomarkers and outcome measures particularly relevant to Kabuki Syndrome are required by the FDA and other regulators in order to show treatment efficacy. Now, Kabuki has lots in common with other diseases, but in order to prove that a drug works for Kabuki, we need these Kabuki Syndrome outcome measures and biomarkers. They measure treatment efficacy, but they also increase industry interest and funding opportunities to help develop more therapeutic candidates. If you know you can measure something that will improve a particular disease, as an industry person, you're more likely to focus on that disease. So these biomarkers will be used to measure that treatment efficacy. And there's no currently validated Kabuki Syndrome biomarkers or outcome measures, and we are aiming to change that. So if you look at this slide, you'll see that we have a pre-competitive consortium we call KSOC with 6 top institutions across the US and Canada. So there's Boston Children's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, Kennedy Krieger Institute at Johns Hopkins Medicine in Baltimore, Maryland, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, Sick Kids in Toronto, Canada, and Holland Bloorview, also in Toronto, and Seattle Children's Hospital in Seattle, Washington. KSOC allows us to find biomarkers and outcome measures that more quickly by KSF providing the required infrastructure to these 6 institutions to support recruitment of patients and data collection from the largest cohort of people with Kabuki syndrome. It'll accelerate biomarker validation, which means we can find a treatment for patients more quickly. KSF will be an oversight body to ensure accountability of the consortium members, playing an integral and active role in recruiting the community to participate in research. And we've done a great job, and you as the community have also done a great job, and so have our researchers at each of these institutions, as you're going to see. So we have this infrastructure in place, and we know that the consortium cannot exceed without you, our community, which is why we're funding travel for 150 families to participate at these sites around North America. And we already have half of the contingent has already been to one of these sites. So of the 150 families, we're more than halfway there already. KSOC helps allow industry, academia, and our community to move potential therapies in the pipeline to human clinical trials. And it also has the potential to unlock larger grants and funding to provide additional research initiative and therapeutic opportunities for the community. So data from these visits will be used to develop 3 different biomarkers. The first one is something called a DNA methylation signature. Individuals with Kabuki syndrome exhibit a distinct pattern of chemical modifications of their DNA known as a methylation signature. We believe if we can validate this methylation signature, then we can see how it changes when patients undergo treatment. Metabolic biomarkers are a second type of outcome measure, and these are specific small molecules like glucose or lipids called metabolites that are found in biological samples like blood, urine, or saliva. And we believe that there could be Kabuki syndrome specific metabolic signatures in these fluids that are easy to see and easy to note changes in when people with the disease have different treatments in place. And the third one is something called an event-related potential, or ERP. ERP measures the electrical activity in the brain in response to stimuli. And we believe there is a Kabuki syndrome specific ERP signature. And if that's true, when patients are in a clinical trial, we can see if this signature changes when the patients are undergoing therapy. So KSOC aims to develop and validate these biomarkers for use in a clinical trial to measure treatment response. If we find one or more validated biomarkers that change that biomarker from a treatment, would be strong evidence that the treatment is actually doing something. KSOC was launched last year at the research conference, and in the last year, we've made immense progress. As I said, we're over halfway there. The steering committee met in person for the first time to discuss data analysis. The first set of samples have been received for processing, and we've expanded our clinical sites to include St. Jude Research Hospital starting in 2025. We've connected with 103 families and connected them to research coordinators at the site. 76 of these families have been enrolled and completed their visit, and so we're well on our way to meeting our 150 goals. To learn more, and if you want to see if you're eligible, please visit the KSOC page on our website. Janet will put a link to that page in the chat now. In September, we hosted the first in-person meeting of the steering committee, bringing together leading experts in Kabuki syndrome to collaborate, problem solve, and strategize. This took place in Toronto. It was a historic meeting where we successfully achieved key objectives, including aligning on the data management plan, finalizing the data collection approach, and discussing the analysis plan for each biomarker. And it was great to be with each of these brilliant people in one room to drive innovation solutions for the Kabuki community. And to give you an idea of how comprehensive the data collection effort is, here's a list of the biospecimen samples and data collected from each participant. They've been sent to specialized labs for analysis, and we're happy to report that the first set of samples have already been received and are being processed. Meanwhile, other data points are being entered into a central database, which will be accessible to KSF and all the KSOC investigators for analysis once a full data set is collected. This is truly exciting news, as this will become the largest data repository for Kabuki syndrome in history. We're eager to see these insights the data will provide, and we're going to give you a sneak preview. So I'm excited to introduce our guest speakers for the next segment. We have two speakers that'll talk about the progress and future direction of KSOC. Dr. Menchi Wang from Sick Kids Research Institute in Toronto will talk about how DNA methylation profiling could improve Kabuki syndrome diagnosis. And Dr. Brittany Spears from St. Jude's Research Hospital in Memphis will discuss the future of the Kabuki Syndrome Consortium. Following Dr. Simpson, we'll have two speakers that'll tell you what we're doing about preparing for clinical trials. So Amanda Gamboa, the Director of Communications at KCF, will tell us about your role in advancing Kabuki syndrome research. And then Dr. Corinne Stovall will reveal our plans to update the Kabuki syndrome clinical management guidelines, and we'll end with a live Q&A moderated by Amanda. So Menchi, I will hand it off to you.